All right, we finished the year 57% overall. Well, not bad. I mean, you're making money. You're making money. Even with the VIG, you're making money. So let's get you. We're going to have to go 4 because there's 4 NFL playoff games. 4 for 4. Right? Okay. Texans taking on the Bills. I don't know if Deshaun Watson is Michael Jordan, as Dabo Sweeney said that he is, but I do think he's a great big game player. Josh Allen, we have no real sense. And as much as the Bills have had a really good season, and they found a way to make it work with him, this is the biggest game of his life. He's playing on the road, and the last biggest game of his life was in New England, and they didn't win. Houston's a 3-point favorite. They get J.J. Watt back. They have, by my estimation, the best wide receiver on the field as well, and home field advantage. They've won big games at home this year. I'm going to take the Texans and lay the 3 points. The Titans travel to New England, and they take on the Patriots. This is a Titan team that they did win their last game of the year over the Texans, but that was against the Texans' backups. You look before that, let's go through their wins. Beat the Chiefs, but the Chiefs didn't have Pat Mahomes. Beat the Jags, the Colts, the Raiders, Buccaneers, Chargers, Falcons, Browns. Do you notice what's missing with all of those wins, with the exception of the Texans win at the end of the season? Anybody? Where's the good team that they've beaten? Right? Where's the good team? Now, you could say the same thing really about the Patriots, except, well, they beat the Eagles, playoff team, beat the Cowboys, beat the Bills. And then at the end of the day, look, do I think the Titans can go in and beat them? I do. Do I think they will beat them? I don't. Now, it's a 5-point spread. Ooh, that's where it gets crazy. I'm going to take the Titans to cover the Patriots to win. Titans to cover Patriots to win. Split hairs, if you will. The Vikings are taking on the Saints in New Orleans. Saints are, reputation-wise, great at home, right? And the Saints end up the year winners of 3 in a row, beating the Panthers, the Titans on the road, although the Titans didn't have Derrick Henry, and the Colts, Falcons, Panthers, Buccaneers, Cardinals, Bears, Jaguars, Cowboys. So they haven't beaten a playoff team, with the exception of the Titans. And they beat the Seahawks way back when. I don't think the Saints are as good as their reputation. Just don't. Now, they are at home, and they're much better. I think the Vikings keep this thing close. I'm going to take the Vikings to cover the 7.5-point spread. Seattle's a 1.5-point favorite, but a team that has lived and died on running the football doesn't really have a running game anymore. And so now it's Russell Wilson running around back there. The Eagles, well, they've just been surviving, right? But the Eagles have won 4 games in a row. They've somehow cobbled it together. I think the Eagles win this game. They are home dogs. Give me the Eagles.
5 on 3. 1, 2, 3.
There it is. 5 NFL.
Let's go, 5.
5 college. 5 for 5 with Doug Gottlieb.
Boom.
So, Texans, Titans, and the number, Vikings, and Eagles. We'll see what RJ Bell thinks about those picks. At RJ in Vegas is the Twitter handle. Pregame.com is the website's official odds provider of the NFL. RJ, how was your New Year?
You know, NFL One Day, Associated Press today.
Yes. Associated Press today. Okay, so by the way, what's the bowl season been like for Vegas?
You know, it's such a paradox because there's all the debating about 4 teams, 8 teams, whatever. What seems to happen is the bowl games, other than the playoff games, unless it's a very unique situation, seem lukewarm, right? I mean, you are a big college fan. How many games did you sense people were excited about? Not you necessarily, but let's say the average college football fan.
I know college football's hurt itself. I don't think it's helped itself with the college football playoff, to be honest with you. Like, giving away the January 1st, and I know that the Rose Bowl is powerful. They want the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl. You could have easily done one national semifinal early, and then the Rose Bowl, and then the other national semifinal late. I think that is one way in which you could have done it. Or you could have played it simultaneously with it, and done one on ESPN and one on, and then the Rose Bowl on ABC if that's the way you did it. But January 1st used to be all about college football, And it still kind of is. It just loses its zip when it doesn't have the national semifinals.
Well, I can remember when, this has been a little while now, that Ohio State played Florida, and it was in Arizona, and I went down to that game, and I was driving back with my buddy, and it was, the day after the championship game, and they were talking next week's NFL playoffs on all the talk shows, but, literally the morning after the game. So to some degree, I think the college football powers that be made a mistake, whereas I get what the NFL is trying to do. They went from Sunday to Monday back, 1969 or 70. Then they said, all right, let's do Thursday. Let's do Saturday games occasionally. They keep expanding. Doesn't seem like it's hurting them. Well, if you aren't popular enough to keep expanding, all it does is dilute you even more. And I think all these bowl games, as a guy in the profession, I groan at some of these games.
My only other thought is I don't think we need to add teams to decide a national champion. I just don't. Like Oregon won
if that's the only thing people are excited about. Look at March Madness. Why I get the whole you can't have 6 rounds, but you being a college basketball guy first, isn't March Madness the jump from the regular season interest to March Madness the biggest of any sport?
Yeah, baseball is a huge jump, but yes. But I think that a lot of that is the bracket. Right, the bracket makes it super exciting. Everybody can fill out a bracket. It takes no real brains to do so, and I think it completely waters down the regular season, and it doesn't always give us a true champion. We don't always get the best team, and then football is just different, right? Football is a war of Oregon won last night against Wisconsin. Great, Wisconsin is not as good as the rest of those teams. Why I've seen them against Ohio State, it wasn't competitive. Oregon they're a nice team. They're a step below the 3 elite teams. We know who the elite teams are. It's not that hard to identify. And I think that the idea that the bowl season gives us half the schools in the country end up as winners in their last game is in fact important.
Is it? Why is that important?
It's important for the programs, the spirit of it, just the way it is. I don't think you have to have a playoff. Just because every other sport has one does not mean you have to have one in college football.
No, I know you don't have to. It's just, to me, the idea, you'd have to get creative, right? Because if you're going to play, let's say you go to 16, because then you've got a bracket, right? You've got a bracket at 16. The question then becomes, can you have some if-then games at the end of the year, meaning this game's going to happen out of conference unless one of these two make the playoffs, then there's another contingency. So now everyone plays about the same amount of games. It's just for those 16 teams, they're potentially different games. I would be interested in 8. And I know we're not talking all college football, so I'll say this quickly. I think if you had all 5 conference champions, the big boys, right? You had 2 wild cards.
Listen, I know. And then you have one. Here's
group of 5. Oh, that'd be good.
Group of 5 sucks. They're not as good as the other ones.
And that's the beauty of it.
But it's not the beauty of it. It's not college basketball. They don't have a chance. They can't win 3 games against the big teams.
But can they win 1?
What's the difference?
Well, if Central Florida would have beat the number 1 team a couple years ago, that would have, in the first round, it would have been a big story.
It would have been a big story for a minute, and then it would have killed viewership because nobody wants to watch Central Florida get stomped by Clemson in the national championship game. They just don't. They just don't.
Yeah, I hear you, but it would be 3 rounds, obviously, right? If there were 8.
Be three rounds. They can't win 3 games against those teams.
But then we better go down to 16 or only the top 4 seeds when it comes to college basketball.
We're good. More is not more. Less is more. What's your pick of the week?
Boy, I'm tight on this one. I'm going to go with Houston. And it's all about the number here. To me, this line is saying that the Bills are the better team. And if you look, and I heard you before I came on, and you were going through the schedules. I think that's a great exercise, Doug. What is that win the Bills had where everyone said, oh my, they are better than we thought? The narrative after the Cowboy game on Thanksgiving certainly shifted a little bit. And then we were supposed to hear how good they were going to play the Pats, but they really didn't. So I think there's been too much of an up. I think Buffalo's a solid team, too much upgrade. And Houston, for whatever reason, we're not acting like that they are as good as they've been this year. And if anything, last point on the game, it's like the NBA. If you have a team that has erratic effort during the regular season, right? Some days they're on, some days they're off mentally. They are better in the playoffs because their top ceiling is better than their season.
Right.
Well, to me, Houston is that team. Yep. So I like Houston.
All right, Houston to win. Houston to cover as well. 3-point
Yes,
favorites.
2.5. 2.5.
Is this the 2.5? I love. Make sure you put on my pick. Houston 2.5.
Shop.
Okay, so is this the end of the Patriots era?
What are we defining the era as winning Super Bowls?
I don't know. I mean, do they lose this weekend?
No, I don't think so. Though the line really is given a ton of respect to the Titans, right? Like 4.5, 5. That's saying that the Titans are only a smidge behind New England. And to me, and this is an example of something I think you excel at, Doug, is the logic side of sports. This is really a debate. Is the most recent games more important, or is the season more important? Because over the season, quarterback change and all, New England's much better. Over the course of the last 6 weeks, I think Titans are the better team. So I don't trust the short term typically as much. And don't forget the Pats, not only the offense dropping off, that D isn't what it was earlier in the year either.
Well, they're playing against better level competition as well.
No doubt. But I think the adjustment like a Football Outsiders would make for strength of schedule, it's been more than that.
Fascinating stuff. Seattle's an interesting team. They had Marshawn Lynch, who didn't look this last week like he could move a ton. They still had a great shot, although for a team that plays every week in a close game, they look like they'd never been in a close game before. They end up losing to San Francisco on a series of bizarre kind of plays, but they did lose the game. But they're a running team that is without their top 3 running backs. They go on the road to Philadelphia, who's red hot, although kind of devoid of any top-level talent at tight end or even outside the numbers. Who wins that game?
I like Philly, and I just think and this is where I differ from the math guys that never look up from the computer, is what those guys will say.
Computer folks, as Dave Gettleman likes to call them.
These are the kind of guys that they say there is no clutch. That Joe Montana and Andy Dalton, I don't know, well, I'm picking those 2 eras, but they are the same clutch level. It's like, all right, doesn't feel right, but the math is saying it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I look at the Eagles, and you start back to that Atlanta game 3 years ago. Atlanta had the ball inside the 10, 2 minutes or less left. The odds said Atlanta was favored to beat Philly. How different would the narrative be about Peterson, about everything about the Eagles? They won that game. They end up winning the Super Bowl. Even after that, though, last year, they were left for dead going into that Rams game. They were double-digit dogs. Won that one. They won a bunch of games this year. This is the best team I've seen in must-win games, like maybe ever. I mean, really? So is that nothing? If that's nothing, then I don't really like the Eagles. It feels like it's something, even if at minimum it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they feel confident about it.
All right, last thing. Who is the odds-on favorite to be the next head coach of the Cowboys?
Who do you think is the best person to pick, though, if you're a Cowboys fan?
Well, I don't know, because I don't think the big-time coaches want it, because Jerry's going to make so many of the calls. I don't think you want to change the offensive staff, so I think you probably bring in a defensive guy. And on the other hand, do you have Chris Richard? Do you elevate Chris Richards, who everybody else likes? But your defense wasn't great this year. I don't know what the answer is. Now,
do you hear with the OC, the young fellow, what was it? I'm having a mental block.
Kellen Moore.
Kellen Moore. Do you feel like he's a keeper?
I think the more, if you start going through new guys every year with a quarterback, it becomes increasingly difficult to get the quarterback to, and it's not what I think, it's what Jerry thinks, right?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. But listen, if we could figure that out, we'd be rich.
Well, Jerry approved it. Obviously, Jerry wanted it, or maybe he got kind of talked into it. He's young. It's his first year. They were the number 1 offense in some metrics.
Oh, listen, one of the great debates the entire second half of this season with amongst the wise guys in Vegas is why aren't the Cowboys better on the scoreboard? Because their stats, like you said, in some cases, their entire team stats were the best in the NFL.
It's a crazy, crazy thing. And yet they end up 8-8, didn't score a touchdown in 3 games. And yet we all think their offenses statistically should be better than what the outcome actually was. You can hear Straight Out of Vegas after the show for an hour. Jonas Knox and, of course, RJ Bell. At RJ in Vegas is the Twitter handle. Pregame.com is the website. RJ, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, what up? Doug Gottlieb here. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Fox Sports Radio. You can catch my show, all the shows on Fox Sports Radio, unique interviews, strong takes, Just interesting discussion on the sports topic of the day, of the week, of the month. It's all encompassing. It's everything you need right here on YouTube. Subscribe.